Hello, hello, hello. Checking out some audio here. I'm gonna fix that in just a second. Hello, hello. Hey, what's going on? Instructor Brooks here. Trying out a new mic today, so see how that goes. Well, let's get into it. I'm super pumped. This is the beginning of our entire month-long series on Gait. So today's main thing is going to be going over the basics of Gait. We got to know the normal so that we understand the abnormal. And then later on next week, I'll be going over Gait deviations. Remember, we got memberships now for our YouTube fans and supporters. So to help us bring you more of the content that you want, and this will help us get your opinion on exactly what you want. So we have two options, this supporter for $2.99 a month and the student for $9.99 a month. You can click on those to get more details about what you get, but a big aspect is that you are going to help drive the content that I bring you. Like I said, we got our supporter and student. So, hey, if you just want to, like I said, give some support, get your comments answered immediately, that's your supporter. The student, we give you a whole lot more. Just click that join button underneath any of our videos. Remember, share your success stories with us. So, if you pass the boards, that's what means the most. So, recommend this channel to classmates. We're trying to do whatever we can to reduce the stress, pain, and overwhelm that students and instructors have. Look at all these are my favorite. Pass the exam, pass the exam. These are people who just passed the boards most recently. What was it? In April. So look at all this. Success, videos helped, studying helped. Let's stop stressing out about this exam and let's just go crush it. That's what I say. So now we're going to dive into it. The foundations of Gait. All right, so Gait is humanity's main mode of locomotion to experience our world. That's why it's so important. You can't run if you can't walk. This is one of the most important features of the human species because it's how we get around our environment. Study tip, writing test questions is a great way to see what you know and how well you know it. So it's a high-level thinking study strategy. If you want to know more, well, hey, stay on with me, sign up for tutoring, and just, become a student, and we're going to make you even better at passing exams. Source material today is coming out of the Essentials of Kinesiology, pretty common book used in most PTA programs. So, Riddle the Sphinx. Let's see, who can get this? What is it that which has one voice yet becomes four-footed, two-footed, and three-footed? Feel free to type your answer in the chat and see if you get it right. Do you know? Yes, a human. There you go. Crawling around on all fours as a baby, on 2 feet, and then you get that cane for your third foot when you're older. Classic. All right, objectives today. Know the basic terminology of Gait. If we don't know the vocab, then we can't speak the same language. We got to know it. We're going to discuss the two main phases of the Gait cycle, the stance and swing phase, and we'll discuss all 8 events that occur within those two phases. We're going to make sure you understand joint position, the muscle involved, the type of contraction, and even the nerves that would innervate the muscles. And let's be ready to progress towards Gait deviations. Like I said earlier, you need to know the normal so you can observe the deviations. You can't pick out a deviation next week if you don't know what normal is, okay? Now, you might be able to say, well, that's not normal, but you got to be able to pick out and name the deviation. To also see the potential or cause for things like arthritis, back pain, reduced function, and cause for more injury. So deviations can add to potential for injury. It also allows you to develop treatment for reducing that asymmetrical use, improve posture, improve daily function. Athletic performance, you'd be like, well, it's just walking. Yeah, but if you're walking and have a deviation, it's all going to be accentuated when you start running. And reduce the chances of injury. So if we want to be able to pick out the deviations and then treat the deviation, we have to know the normal. So let's get into the gait cycle. What is a gait cycle? Well, it pertains to everything that happens between two consecutive heel strikes of the same foot. So remember, it is the same foot. Now I know this guy's running, but you have right heel, two, right heel again. Everything that happens from heel strike to heel strike is the gait cycle. So some spatial descriptors so that when you're thinking about your documentation, which we're not really going into today, you should be able to document these types of descriptors to explain what you're observing with gait. So, for example, a step. A step is the distance between heel strike on one foot and heel strike of the other foot. So if we're looking here, there's your right heel, followed by the left heel. That is a step, okay? Then a stride, which is actually the gait cycle. And that's going to be from heel of one to heel of the other. So stride and gait cycle are the same thing. The gait cycle is everything that happens within a stride. Then you have step width. So from the heel of one foot to the heel, to the heel of the other foot. So right in here, let me get the pen out. Okay, so if your right heel lands here, your left heel is here, it's this distance. That's the width. And this is a huge sign of a lot of neuropathologies that start to develop when that width changes. So we'll talk more about that in the deviations. Cadence. This is going to change with deviation. So this is number of steps per minute. What is the average steps per minute for a human being, for an average human? Whatever that means. What is an average human? Good luck. But the right answer is 110 steps per minute. There you go. Your fun fact. So displacement of the center of gravity. So we talked about balance a couple weeks ago, and we should remember that dynamic balance is the ability to maintain the center of gravity or mass within the base of support, and you're purposely moving the center of gravity, whether it's up, down, left, right, forward, back, or even rotating. So if you don't remember that stuff, check that lesson out. So we need to think about how does that affect gait, or how has that worked with gait? Well, the center of mass is moving vertical when you're walking, and approximately 5 centimeters. So there's a lot of up and down movement of the center of gravity. That's one of the reasons why walking is dynamic balance control. There's also lateral displacement. So you got 4 centimeters total, about 2 on each side as you're walking. Okay, so sorry, whatever those slides were. So now, this is something we're going to go over this. You're not going to have it all memorized right at first. Totally fine. But these are the key muscles and nerves you have to know in order to be able to answer simple test questions about gait and get into treatment concepts. So make sure you know the anterior tibialis is innervated. What it's innervated by: gastroc, soleus, quads, hamstrings, glute max, glute medius, iliopsoas. Those are your top muscles that you need to know. Those are the ones we're going to use when analyzing the gait cycle. Okay? So now the nerves for those, you should be thinking to yourself, oh man, anterior tib, what is it? There you go, your deep peroneal. Gastroc soleus, what do we got? Tibial. And if you don't know these quick, this is the first thing you need to study after the spatial descriptors and the basic vocab. You have to know this or you're going to get ripped apart on test questions. Quadriceps are going to be femoral, hamstring sciatic, glute max, inferior gluteal nerve. That glute medius, what's it going to be? What's it going to be? Superior gluteal nerve. Students mix these up all the time. They always give the glute max the superior gluteal nerve, I think because they think max, then they think superior. Don't do that. That's not what it is. Stop missing that. It's a simple question. And also the femoral nerve for the iliopsoas, or the hip flexors. So there are 2 phases in the gait cycle. You have the stance phase and the swing phase. So in the stance phase, you're going to have 5 events that occur, and in the swing phase, you're going to have 3, giving you a total of 8. So you need to know these and in order, or again, you're going to get ripped apart. So you got heel strike. And what I have on the other side is the Rancho Los Amigos descriptions of gait. I personally use generally the considered older terminology like heel strike, but you should be prepared for either one of those on exam questions. So following heel strike, we have foot flat or load response, mid stance, heel off terminal swing, toe off pre-swing. Then we go over to swing phase. Remember, this is all on the same leg, so each leg has to go through all 8 phases for it to be normal. Early swing, mid swing, and then terminal swing. All right? So learning enhancement. How can we improve or where are we working at right now? So I want you to understand that right now, this might not be the fun stuff, but we have to remember some of these basic things. We got to remember the muscles, the nerves, the phases of gait, the events of gait, the spatial descriptors, and I know that seems like a lot, but that is a huge investment on the front end to make everything else easier once we can speak the same language. So we are in the remember stage. So here's an idea. Here's something you can try. Create some flashcards for each event of the gait cycle. So for example, on the front of your card, put event, and I'll show you an example of this. And then you can put like heel strike or whatever. You should have all 8 of them. And then on the back, put some details, like it's the first event. You need to know that heel strike is the first event. So once you have all that done, where you have a flashcard that says heel strike on the back, you put first event. You just get the first thing down, which is the order that they are. So you're going to remember those in order. And then you want to work towards picturing each event, which we'll show you here when we go to the lab. So example, have a flashcard where it says heel strike. There you go. Heel strike on one side. You're going to flip that guy over, and this card is going to have more than what you would expect to have right now. But you see that I have put, as the little fact, it is the first event. Now, as we go through the lab stuff, what I would start doing is adding ankle, knee, and hip, because I'm going to go over ankle, knee, and hip every time, and then the muscle and the nerve, and you can start adding more information there. Simple way to try to work on remembering some things. So, hey, if you're watching this video not live, start working on your flashcards. Don't keep going through. If you're watching it live, you get the point. You're going to work on your flashcards. So, pop quiz. When is the center of gravity at its highest point? Answer in the chat. When is the center of gravity at its highest point? This is important because this is when we're going to be the most unstable. Excellent job. Mid stance is correct. That's when we're at our highest point. When is the center of gravity at its most lateral point, though? That's also where we're going to be the most unstable. Answer in the chat. Mid-stance. So guess what? Mid-stance is easily the most unstable time during the gait cycle for us. All right. Most unstable during mid-stance. Another pop quiz for you. How many events are in one gait cycle? And you better get this right. 8. 8 events. You must have 8. All right. So, if you're not watching this live, you've already created your cards. If you are watching it live, you'll go back, rewatch, and do this. But you're going to add information to your cards because we are going to go to the lab, and I'm going to be talking to you about what's happening at the ankle, the knee, and the hip during each of the 8 events in the gait cycle. So take a quick break, grab a drink of water, do a little stretch, play some tunes here. I'll see you in the lab. Hey guys, testing it out here. Can you hear me? Oh, sorry. This music is the line.
I gotta be back here because I still gotta get my swing in.
Hey guys. Woo. You hear it? You can hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right. So here we are in the lab. Let's go through the 8 phases, or the 8 events of the gait cycle. So the first one, and if you have your flashcards, if you're watching this after the fact, you should have your flashcards ready to start filling out this information. So we're going to start with heel strike. So upon heel strike, we need to understand, and I'm just going to run through ankle, knee, and hip on all these. At the ankle needs to be at least neutrally dorsiflexed, so 0 degrees here. That is because the anterior tib, that's innervated by the deep peroneal nerve, is isometrically contracting to hold that foot. Then as we move up to the knee, this is probably one of the top 3 most missed questions for students, is that at the knee, the quads are not isometric, they're eccentric because they're cushioning that force that's coming up from the ground. So we need to distribute that force. So Brandon, if you could just kind of exaggerate, come back up and then redo heel strike and let them see a little flexion. So a little bit of flexion's occurring. So it's eccentric quads on heel strike. Then as we move up to the hip, the glute max is going to be isometric, maintaining this slight hip flexion. That is the heel strike event of the gait cycle. Now, as we move into foot flat, the foot is going to go flat to the ground, which means we need an eccentric contraction of the anterior tib. Now the ankle is plantar flexed. As we move up to the knee, we still are cushioning that force, so it's still an eccentric contraction of the quads. And then as we move up to the hip, you're going to have concentric glute max, because now it's going to start to pull that hip into extension. So from here, now we're going to move up and we're going to be into mid stance. So at mid stance, the important thing for mid stance, the entire goal of mid stance is for this leg to be as long as possible so that the other leg on the other side during mid swing can get past this leg. So here, you actually, this is another very missed question, you actually have an eccentric contraction of the gastroc soleus because you're moving into dorsiflexion now. So it's kind of slowing that process down here as the tibia is moving anterior. At the knee, the quads, I know it might look like they're contracting now, it's only because he's standing there. The quads are actually not considered active during mid stance, okay? So nothing really happening at the knee, trying to get as much full extension as possible. It's literally momentum that's bringing them up and having the knee be extended here. Then when we get up to the hip, 2 big things working. The glute max is going to be concentric as it continues to pull that femur back. But, and then we'll talk about this a lot more during the deviation section, the glute medius has to stay isometrically contracted to keep that pelvis from dropping down on the other side. And we'll talk about those deviations next week. So that is what's happening at mid stance. Now, as we continue to go through, we now enter heel off. So you should see that heel come off the ground. There we go. So heel off at the ankle. Now we are generating force to start to push our leg into the swing phase. So the gastroc soleus are going to be contracting concentrically. The knee is flexing, but it's not the hamstrings. It's nothing. None of the knee muscles are working here. This is flexing because the gastroc is kicked in, and that is what's caused that flexion. And this is probably the most missed. During heel off, the iliopsoas is eccentric as it's slowing down the hip before it re-engages to bring it forward. So that is heel off. Now we're going to have toe off. So now is the final push off the ground. We still continue that concentric contraction here of the gastroc soleus. The knee is flexed, but it's only because of the plantar flexors contracting, and now the iliopsoas is contracting concentrically. That's what causes the knee flexion. So many students way too often are working on hamstrings to treat gait, and that is not what's causing any of the problems. Again, we'll talk about that later next week. So that's going to be your toe off phase. Now, once the toe's completely off, we have now entered the swing phase. So this is going to be, we have the final concentric of the gastroc soleus. The knee is flexed, but that doesn't That doesn't matter because it's the push off that caused it. The iliopsoas is concentric. So what needs to happen now, this is what needs to happen now at the ankle. We'll come back to that. This between here and mid swing is the most crucial part really for this ankle. You have to have a concentric contraction of the anterior tib to lift that foot up so that when we now go into mid swing, that foot is being held here at neutral dorsiflexion by an isometric contraction of the anterior tib. So we'll back up. Yeah, we'll back up a little bit. So that is why that moment, that split second from toe off through early swing to mid swing, you got to get that anterior tib up. So now where are we at? We are at mid swing. So at mid swing, again, nothing's happening at the knee, and then we have the iliopsoas hip flexors bringing that leg forward. So now the final event, we move, the leg is now anterior of us, and now we're entering terminal swing. The anterior tib stays isometric with neutral dorsiflexion because why? Because of heel strike is coming up next. The knee is, this is the only time the hamstrings are working at the knee. So I'm gonna take your leg here, just kind of so as he's coming forward, the leg is starting to extend, right? You see that extending. Can we see that? It's extending. So what keeps it from slamming into extension is an eccentric contraction of the hamstring. So as the leg's coming forward, the hamstrings start to eccentrically contract to slow that down. And now the same thing happens at the hip. The hip flexors have shut off. The glute max is slowing the hip down as it moves into more flexion with an eccentric contraction. Now I know that was fast, I know that was a lot, but you want to keep watching that over and over again, fill out those cards, and you just have to memorize it. You have to have that memorized. But one of the best ways to memorize stuff is going to be do this, walk through it. Once you have your cards, you should be just walking through it, reading it out loud to yourself. So those are going to be the main things we need to know. I didn't tell you all the nerves, but you can look those up, and you should be doing that. I'll meet you back over at the desk in a few minutes. Take a break for a quick drink of water and a stretch. See you there in a minute. All right. Hey, we'll fix, can you bring the camera up just a tad? So hopefully you can hear me. I know that was a lot that we went through in that lab, but hey, not a big deal. Sometimes there's a lot of information, but that's why we gotta have strategies to learn that stuff. So like I was telling you, with that information, once you have it written down, here's some strategies on what to do to improve the remembering stage of learning on that pyramid I showed you. So, rewatch this presentation and take notes. You have to engage in note taking. You have to engage in the kinesthetic process of writing. And I will say I recommend heavily writing with an actual pencil, not typing it out. I will actually, in this video, I'll give you a link to some gait templates, and then you can fill those out, or you can make your own. I like the flashcards, so, and all it is just blank where you fill out what's happening. So it might be another way to visualize the information, which honestly, I'd say you should be able to do both. So in the description, you can find the link to the Google Docs for the templates. Use the flashcards over and over again. Like I said, you should be able to have the ones, take the side that has all the information on it and be like, okay, with all this information, what phase of gait is this? And then you have the other side where it says maybe heel strike, and then you should be able to say, all right, at the knee, what's happening? Make sure, it should be eccentric quads, femoral nerve, boom, there you go. So you have to engage those multiple times. Kinesthetically, I mean, you could argue about the note-taking, audio-visual. Note-taking is actually a process that requires everything. But walk through the gait cycle, saying each event out loud. You need to do that. So how I had Brandon kind of walking, you want to be able to do that faster and use the cards. But start off slow and just read through your cards. And always go ankle, knee, and hip so you don't forget something. And then as you're walking through each event in the gait cycle, then you can start adding all those muscles in. Types of contractions, the nerves. And this is the strategy that I really like. I say you record yourself doing it, okay? Going through all the stages, all the events, all the phases, everything. And sorry about that. And then put it up on YouTube as an unlisted video, send it to your classmates and see if you make a mistake, and purposely put in a few things to see if they catch the mistakes you make. That is a great way to study this information. All right. So, like I said, that was going to be creating. If you create those videos and create kind of like test questions where you're like, hey, watch this entire video on the 8 events of the gait cycle and tell me if you can pick out the 3 things that I did incorrectly. That's you creating that video. That is really, really, really good at helping you learn the information. So let's try a couple test level questions here. These are basic. So you should try to write test questions, and this would be an example of a simple level 1 type test question. So let's just do the one on the left first. During heel strike, the anterior tibialis is, I'm not gonna give you a ton of time to think about it. The anterior tibialis is contracting isometrically. Okay, you should be able to do this quick. And I would recommend make all the questions, if you do either true, false, or something simple like this. True, false is really nice, where you just say, hey, during the heel strike phase of gait, the anterior tib is contracting isometrically. And literally write everything out as a true, false question. That will be a great way to learn, I promise you. My students are very successful with that. Next question, during mid-stance, which of the following muscles is contracting isometrically? So we just kind of changed it. You see in this question here, I give you the muscle, and then you pick the contraction. Here, I'm giving you the contraction, and now you have to pick the muscle. So at mid-stance, what muscle is isometric? And you better be picking that glute medius. Okay? That's simple level 1 test question writing. And that's something you should be working on as well. So you got a lot. You got the flashcards to create, the flashcards to work on trying to memorize, walking through the gait pattern, saying things out loud, videotaping yourself and sending it to your friends and see if they can pick out when you messed up, or just videotape yourself and then reevaluate yourself to see if you messed up, but no one has to see it but you. Then you have writing test questions. So there's a lot of ways that you should engage this information, and you will learn it, I promise you, if you put in the effort to do it now. That way you don't have to restudy. I hate restudying. What a waste of time to study something that you've already studied. But it's because you didn't learn it. That's why. So let's stop restudy. All right. So remember, to do deviations, we have to be able to know the normal. So when I start talking later on next week about deviations, you want to have a decent understanding of the normal gait pattern. And then when I talk about In 2 weeks, we'll work on some treatment with a goal of having a nice toolbox for some basic exercises, basic things we can do in the clinic or on your lab practicals or practicing in the lab to get you into treating gait. So, like I said, you have plenty of tools to help you learn this material. So, we talked about the flashcards, we talked about the video making, we talked about test questions. I would write the test questions in Google Forms or Microsoft Forms, whatever, so that you can keep like statistics for yourself. If you make a quiz and send it to your classmates, that'd be a great idea. Yeah, Brandon, honestly, that was one of the best things. That changed you in the classroom big time when you would just write questions on the board. And they started off being garbage questions, and then he eventually was able to get the questions. Then he was able to start writing high quality, high level questions. But just like anything, you got to practice. Practice writing those questions. And once you're good at writing questions, you're in the mind of the test maker. Then it's over. It's game over then. You know what they're asking, and you won't fall for their tricks. But you got to think like the test maker. So you got plenty to work on over the next week. We got 2 more lessons. We're going to do gait deviations. We're going to do gait deviations next week. And then the week after that, we're going to do treating those deviations. So in different basic treatment things. So also want to give a shout out to Baroni, physical therapist from the Philippines. Hey, what's up, dude? All right. Glad you're on. So tell all your friends, watch the replay, all that good stuff. Let's crush gait, all right? Gait is, when you're in school, everything is building up to gait. Let's crush gait. If we understand gait, can pick out deviations, have basic treatments that are correct, we are going to take our level as physical therapists and physical therapist assistants to a whole new level. And that's what this month of May is about, is making ourselves way better. So I'll have some details later on about the next time that we'll be doing the gait deviations. I think I'm actually going to do it during the week instead of the weekend because more people like studying then. So we'll try that out to give it to those people what they want there. And let's see, anything else? Any other questions, comments, concerns for the greater good? Bachelor, yeah, sweet, yeah, all right. Hey, it's been a pleasure. It's been awesome. Glad you're all here. Brony, thanks a ton for showing up. And catch you guys on the flip side. See you later.